This is the first lesson in a crash course in movable guitar chords. It's completely free, and you can download the free first movable guitar chords booklet from my website. I'll leave a link for that in the description. In this series, you're going to learn 8 movable guitar chord shapes, and as I mentioned, this is a crash course. You're not going to master the fretboard in a series of short lessons. However, if you take the time to play through the material, study it, and apply it to your own music, you'll understand how movable guitar chords work, and you'll know a handful of the most common types of movable chords. That'll be major, minor, 7th chords, and power chords. This first lesson covers pages 1 and 2 of the first movable chords booklet. We're going to quickly go over the 8 shapes you'll learn in this series, and then I'll show you how to find your root notes on the 5th and 6th strings. These are the 8 shapes you're going to learn in this series. They're all written as C chords, but you can move them around to any root note, and we'll talk about finding your root notes in just a minute. Here's a major chord shape you can play with the root on the 6th string. This is finger 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, and 1. This is written as a C major chord at the 8th fret. It's a C major chord because it's a major chord shape, and our root note is the note C on the 8th fret of the 6th string. And again, we're going to talk about finding those notes in just a minute. If I were to move that down a fret, now my root is on the B, and it would be a B major. That first major shape has the root note on the 6th string. This next shape has the root on the 5th string, and you'll find with all these shapes, the major, minor, 7th, and power chords, you'll have one shape to learn with the root on the 6th string, one shape on the 5th string. So here's our major shape with the root on the 5th string. This is finger 1, and then 3, 3, and 3. So finger 3 is barring those other 3 notes. And some people like to bar the 1st string as well. You can if you like. I like to just play these middle 4 strings for the most part. And again, this is a C major because we're placing the root of this shape on the C, string 5, fret 3. Those are the 2 major shapes in this series. Let's take a look at the minor shapes. So here's a minor shape with the root on the 6th string. This is actually the same as the major shape with the root on the 6th string. You just take your 2nd finger away. Finger 1, 3, 4, 1, 1, and 1. And a minor shape with the root on the 5th string. And this will also be a C minor just because of where I'm placing the root note. This is finger 1, 3, 4, and 2. And if you like, you could bar the 1st string as well, but again, I like to play these middle 4 strings and mute strings 1 and 6. Next, we have 2 dominant 7th chord shapes, and dominant 7th chords are more commonly known as just 7th chords. So a chord like a C7, G7, or an A7, those are dominant 7 chords. Here's the dominant 7 shape we'll study with the root on the 6th string. This is finger 1, 2, 4, and 3, and we're muting strings 1 and 5. And we'll talk about that string muting as we get further into the series. We're just doing a quick overview right now. The other dominant 7 shape you'll learn will have the root on the 5th string, and this is actually the C7 chord that you probably already know, except we're muting the 1st string. If you mute the 1st string, now you have no open strings, and you have a movable chord shape. This is a C7 because I'm placing the root note on that C, string 5, fret 3. If I were to move it up 1 fret, now my root note is on the C sharp or D flat, depending on what you like to call it, and that would be a D flat 7. The last chord we're going to study in this series will be power chord shapes, and you can do power chords with either 3 fingers or 2 fingers. I prefer to do 2 fingers in this series. Here's a power chord with the root on the 6th string. Just those 2 strings, strings 6 and 5. Finger 1 is playing the root, and the other is finger 3. And we're just either muting or just not playing the rest of the strings. And then the power chord shape with the root on the 5th string is actually the same shape. We're just playing it on the 5th string instead. So those are both C power chords. The root is the note the chord is built on, and the key to playing these movable chord shapes is to learn the shapes but also learn where to place them. And for that, we need to find our root notes on the 5th and 6th strings. So there's going to be a little bit of memory work here. At the bottom of page 2 of this Movable Chords booklet, we have 2 diagrams that show the names of the notes on the 5th and 6th strings. And notice in one of the diagrams, some of these notes are spelled as flats. In the other, they're spelled as sharps. Let's take a look at the flat diagram first. Your 6th string is a low E, which you're not going to be playing a whole lot of in this series because we're doing movable chord shapes, but that's your low E. Then your F, G at the 3rd fret, A at the 5th fret, B at the 7th fret, C at the 8th fret, D at the 10th fret, and then another E, an octave higher, at the 12th fret. The notes that I just played are the natural notes, meaning no sharps or flats. Now, if you're a piano player, you know the natural notes as all the white keys on the keyboard. There's a pattern to these natural notes which applies to every string, not just the 6th string. All of these notes, these natural notes, are 2 frets distance from each other, except your E and your F, and your B and your C. Here's our open E, and then our F at the 1st fret. So that's 1 fret's distance. F and G, 2 frets distance. G to A, 2 frets distance. A to B, 2 frets away. B to C, always 1 fret distance. C to D, 2 frets distance. And then D to the next E is 2 frets distance. When you're memorizing the fretboard, the first thing you want to do is memorize those natural notes, and it's very helpful to know that pattern of 2 frets distance between all natural notes except your B, C, and your E and your F. And that's going to apply to all the strings, not just the 6th string. For example, the 5th string, open A, 2 frets away is your B, 1 fret away is your C, 2 frets away is your D, 2 frets away is your E, 1 fret is your F, 2 frets from that is your G, and 2 frets from that is another A, an octave higher than the open string. So as long as you know the name of your open string, you can figure out the rest of the notes from there using that pattern. And then we fill in the gaps with these accidentals. Accidentals are things like sharps and flats. So we're looking at the flat diagram. Let's look at the flats first. A flat simply lowers a note by 1 fret or a half step. For example, here's a G on the 3rd fret. A G flat is 1 fret to the left of that. Here's my A at the 5th fret. A flat is 1 fret to the left. There's my B. B flat, 1 fret to the left. There's my C. Technically, B is C flat, but we're not going to get into that in this series. You might want to check out my guitar theory modules for more about that sort of thing. So we have D, 1 fret to the left is D flat, and this E at the 12th fret, 1 fret to the left is E flat, and that applies to the 5th string as well. Let's go the other way. Here's my A at the 12th fret, 1 fret to the left is A flat. There's my G, there's my G flat, and so forth. So you can use these flats to fill in the gaps between the natural notes. A lot of times these notes are spelled as sharps, not flats, so let's take a look at the diagram with the sharps. A sharp raises a note by a half step or 1 fret. So here's my low F. 1 fret to the right is my F sharp. And notice, if you compare it to the other diagram, F sharp and G flat are the same note. That's called enharmonics, same note spelled differently, and we're not really going to get into the why in this series. Just want you to be aware of that. Here's my G, there's my G sharp. There's my A, 1 fret to the right is A sharp. There's my B. Technically, B sharp and C are the same note, but again, we're not really going to get into that in this series. So there's just my B and my C. 1 fret to the right of my C is C sharp, D, and D sharp. And that works on the 5th string as well. Open A, 5th string. 1 fret to the right, which would be the 1st fret, is your A sharp. Then your B and your C. C to C sharp. C sharp's 1 fret to the right of C. There's my D. 1 fret to the right is my D sharp. There's my E. And now technically, again, E sharp, there is an E sharp. It's just an F. We're not going to get into that. There's my F. 1 fret to the right is my F sharp. G, 1 fret to right is G sharp, and my A. Your assignment is to memorize the notes on the 5th and 6th strings so you know where to place your movable chord shapes. And if this is completely new to you, I've got a couple of videos on learning the guitar fretboard. I'll leave links for those videos in the description. Once you've memorized those notes on the 5th and 6th strings, I'll see you on page 3, which focuses on 2 movable major chord shapes.